we have to ask ourselves, does this person show up for me? Can I trust them? Is there mutual respect? Is there honesty? Is there safety? Are we both free to express ourselves?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Food Matters podcast, your home for nutrition, health, and wellness education. My name is Laurentine. I am a filmmaker and a nutritionist and the founder of foodmatters.com, and I'm here to hold your hand on this journey to optimum health, transformation, and emotional healing. Hello, Food Matters community, and thank you so much for joining us for this very special podcast. I'm joined here with another sister. Thank you, Sheleana. Thank you for joining us. I'm a really big fan of yours, so I'm very grateful that you're having this time on this podcast. And she's joining us from a beautiful organization called Rising Women. And Rising Women is standing for the way that we show up in relationships with ourselves, relationships with our partners, and relationships with our co-workers, any type of relationships. So I'm really grateful for this beautiful work that you are offering to the world, because it is so important right now. And we all need to work on ourselves, our conscious relationships, and the way that we can do our best to be the best version of ourselves. So I'd love to learn from you how you started on this journey, because it's taken you from where you were to where you are now. And I'd love for the audience to get to know you a little bit better.
Yeah, I started Rising Woman when I was in a really interesting place in my own life. I was really sort of coming out of my own rock bottom experience of having all of my childhood trauma unearthed through the ending of a relationship that now when I look back, it's really sort of just, it was a soul contract that I had to fulfill in order to have that awakening. I grew up with a lot of childhood trauma, abandonment, abuse, emotionally unavailable mother. She struggled a lot with her mental health. And so I sort of found my way on my own quite early, and that gave me the opportunity to have a lot of different experiences and see inside all sorts of different family dynamics through foster homes and really kind of get an idea of what I wanted for my future. But that happened through a series of, really tumultuous relationships, really painful experiences, struggling with domestic violence and addiction and everything you can kind of think of. And in the end, what it brought me to was feeling all of the pain and all of the heartache that I had never allowed myself to feel. And so when I began Rising Woman, I started just writing and just sharing the things that were coming through me as a way to sort of, give to others, but also just to work through it myself. And I did that for a few years without it really being, any sort of business idea or anything like that. And then eventually, I felt ready eventually to really begin facilitating and bringing this work to the world. And it's been incredible to see the growth and the organic expansion that has happened. And I think a big part of that is just that so many of us can relate to my story and to having not had safe or functional families or environments growing up. And relationship really is sort of that key. It's that thing that we all want. We want those dream relationships. And yet so many of us have only experienced the painful spectrum of relationship or the struggle of relationship. And I think when we look at relationship as the foundation for how our world looks, that can really change how we show up.
Wow, what a beautiful mission. I love that you're doing this work, and it's so needed right now. And I feel like with so many of us post-COVID, having come out of difficult times where either we were in a place where we were stuck together with our partner and having to feel all the emotions together and having to go through fear and having to go through worry together and perhaps financial distress, a lot of my friends and family members are having to re-look at the meaning of a relationship and how we stand by and support each other. And I'm finding that there's a lot of people that have had an awakening during this time of COVID where they perhaps didn't feel that alignment with their relationship and have ventured outside of their relationship and now have either broken up or found ways that they can be with their partner in a more healthy way. What do you feel that this change that's coming? I feel that there's this change in the air of how we look at marriage, how we look at the old-fashioned way of relationships in a monogamous long-term relationship. How is that shifting?
I mean, with every generation, if you look back, there's always these massive changes. I was just talking with my husband about this the other day about how we look at some of the dynamics that his parents felt were normal. Like, for example, they never talked about money together. You know, their entire marriage, they've been married for 40 years and it was never a thing. And we were talking about how strange that would feel. It would feel like this huge elephant in the room for us. How can you get anything done if you're not communicating about money, right? It's like, how can you run a household together? You just see how every generation we shift and we evolve, and we're talking about like, well, what's our daughter going to be experiencing in her relationships, 30 years from now? What is she going to look back on and think, what the heck were they doing? And so what I see now is there is this huge wave of people who are waking up to themselves and who really want more. They don't want to settle. They want to experience fulfillment, and really conscious relationship is sort of that pinnacle that everybody's striving for. And yet I see some challenges with the way that our culture is approaching relationship right now too, which is that in this striving for having it all, we end up having these really high bars and seeking perfection where perfection doesn't exist. And so there is sort of this pendulum swing that happens whenever change occurs in the world or, anywhere really. We see these extremes, from one end to the other. And right now, I think what we're learning is to find the middle ground, right? And to allow for the imperfection in ourselves and in our prospective partners or in our long-term partners, not having to be exactly the same, not having to have everything in common, while also knowing what our values are and having certain boundaries in place so that the relationship can be fulfilling. And that's a big piece of my work. That's a big piece of what I do in my programs and in my book too, is how do we bring that into balance so that we're honoring ourselves, but we're not also, unconsciously keeping everyone at arm's length because nobody can possibly fit the bill.
Right, that's so true. And how do you feel in regards to when is it the right time to end a relationship? There's so many, I guess, questions, and I mean, it would actually be better if we just go into what is a toxic relationship, like where you're just like, okay, these are definitely red flags. And I remember one of your big posts was about, sometimes it is important to let someone go and to realize that you deserve more, that you are here for a beautiful purpose, that you don't need to have pain and suffering. So I'd love you to share, in your opinion, what is considered, a reason for you to say, look, that you need to just let that go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, this is a question I get all of the time. People are always sending me notes on Instagram or, telling me about their relationships. And of course, nobody knows but you really what that dynamic is or what it feels like. And so it's really tough to ever tell anyone, hey, this relationship isn't right, especially if they're just sending you a quick message. It takes time to really know both people and what's going on in there. But of course, there are some serious things that we should never accept, right? Like, of course, abuse is not something that we would ever accept or that we should ever accept. Um, but when it comes down to it, I think ultimately, if we want to be in relationship with somebody, we have to ask ourselves, does this person show up for me? Can I trust them? Is there mutual respect? Is there honesty? Is there safety? Are we both free to express ourselves? Or do I have to hide parts of myself or contort myself or hold back parts of myself or perhaps even lie in order to feel safe in this relationship, right? How free am I to be who I am? How free am I to grow in this relationship? And willingness to lean in to conflict, to apologize. These are the kinds of things that we're looking for. So if we're in a dynamic where there's one person who really wants to make it work and the other person has pretty much zero interest in being accountable or having hard conversations or doing repair after a conflict or showing up differently in conflict so their partner feels safe, then you can pretty much guarantee that that relationship isn't going to last.
And I see this tendency for where we're still suffering from childhood wounds, that we somehow go for unavailable partners. And
Mm-hmm.
could you explain a little bit more about why our humankind tend to do this, and what it really denotes about parts of ourselves that we haven't really been able to heal from our past?
Yeah, this is such a tough one, isn't it? Because there's so many of us who can really relate to the sensation of feeling turned on by somebody who is playing hard to get or isn't fully available. And it triggers this part of us that really wants to, change a person or convert them or win the love. And like you said, that does come from the wounded inner child. That does come from that part of us that somewhere along the way learned that we had to perform for love, or that we were only lovable if did a certain thing or behaved a certain way or showed up a certain way. And also, we just, as human beings, we tend to come into this world with some of these core fears, this fear that we're not enough, or that we're not lovable, or that there's something wrong with us, or that we're broken. And it's funny, we see this actually ingrained into us through religion as well. You're born a sinner, you're broken. We see it in the spiritual world. You're half a person until you meet your twin flame. It's just everywhere. And so that's a pretty deep core belief, I think, that runs most of our relationship patterns when we are operating from that earliest unconscious stage of relationship where, we don't know why we're pursuing a person. We might not even really know much about them on a heart to heart level. We're really following our hormones, right? And so what I work with people to do is to step back from that a little bit and start to go a little bit higher with the questions and with the energy, and to tune in. And how do you actually feel in your body with this person? Never mind what they think of you. What do you think of them? Right? Really recentering and coming back home to ourselves so that we can then make choices from our core and from being in our bodies, rather than, chasing from this wound and inevitably just ending up on a hamster wheel.
Wow, it's so well said. And I mean, as part of the Food Matters mission as well, we really help people find the root cause of illness. And so often I go and dig deeper with my clients, and I find that their illness is not necessarily related to what they've been eating or toxicity, because and we've worked on so many ways to detoxify them. But really, when it comes down to it, it comes down to a core wound or some sort of a way that they were hurt in childhood, where they had a belief system that they believed about themselves that then now is showing up as an illness. An illness is a
Mm-hmm.
dis-ease where they cannot feel at ease in their body. They're not feeling safe with themselves anymore. And they've almost lost the ability to communicate with their bodies and not listening to the inner voices anymore. So this is why it is so important for us to work on healing as like a beautiful holistic modality, from food choices to conscious choices of partners to ways that we nourish and look after ourselves through self-care. But yeah, this is so true. If we have voices in our head that are saying we're not good enough, or that we need to perform to be loved, and that feels familiar, then we're going to keep seeking those type of relationships. And because it feels familiar, perhaps you've had a really abusive father or a mother that has showed you that that is how you need to get love from them. I would love for you to share some experiences maybe that you've had with clients yourselves where you can show, like, you actually can talk through a story of a person that has healed from that, because I think we all need to hear this as much as we can to be able to relate to it and go, aha, this could be me.
Yeah, totally. I mean, there's so many stories that I've put in my book from different clients that have taken Becoming the One, because it was a digital program before it was a book, right? So we had this huge wealth of people who had gone through the program, and there's just a lot of beautiful stories, particularly people who did experience some form of not even abuse, truly. It doesn't have to be so extreme. It can be as simple as having very emotionally unavailable parents, or having a divorce where one of the parents sort of leaves the home and then drifts away and isn't as in contact anymore. And so there's this absence. And what that can really trigger, there's an example in my book. There's a person who, had a really close relationship with their father, and then their father went through a divorce with their mother, and then the father sort of just drifted, and that close relationship was broken. And so in her current relationship as an adult, every time her partner, who ironically had to go away for work a lot and needed to be on these long trips, every time her partner would go away, she and her partner would get in this big explosive fight. And she was creating this with them. Like, there was never a nice night before he would go away. So all of their last nights together would always end in this explosive conflict. And as she realized that she was actually being triggered, her abandonment wound with her father was being triggered every time her partner left, she was able to shift how she started showing up and creating enough safety within herself to express her fears when her partner was about to leave. And instead of bringing out the ego and the defensiveness and pushing them away, she was able to say, actually, this is what's coming up for me, and here's my fear. And that created connection and closeness. And then those nights started to shift. And then, the night before, it started to be a nice time together. And I think that's just such a perfect example of how most of us operate in relationship. We don't even realize that we are unconsciously pushing love away, or creating conflict, or keeping someone at arm's length, because we're afraid to be hurt again, right? Or because it reminds us too much of something that we did experience when we were young. And it's not even that we have a script running in our head. It's so buried deep in our nervous systems that we might be totally unaware. And so our mind will convince us that there really is a problem in the partnership, and that our partner really does have the worst of intentions. Sometimes that's just not the case, right? Sometimes we really are just assuming that the exact same thing that happened when we were young is going to happen again. Um, and so that's why getting to know our histories on an intimate level, and building that relationship to our inner child again, and looking back at, what was my conditioning, where might these fears or these, stories be coming from, the clearer we are, then the more we can trust ourselves. And that also means that we can trust when there really is something that's off, right? Because it's not always this projection. Sometimes there really something is wrong in the relationship.
Yeah.
But it's hard to know when we don't know ourselves.
This is so, so true. And you touched on something really important here. It's the topic of safety, and feeling safe to be able to express ourselves freely in a partnership. And I look back, and I was having this conversation with my mom, and, in her partnership and my father, it was never really something that was, sometimes feelings weren't really spoken about. And perhaps if we even go back before, and our grandparents and our great grandparents' age, it was really just a mere concept of the relationship where, you provide for each other the safety of a home, and the food, and the children, and I guess the more of the basic needs. But going in more deeper and having a really intimate conversation about feelings and about vulnerability, it wasn't really done. And nowadays, the more that I speak to my friends that are saying, I feel like I need more out of my relationship. I feel like, I need more connection. I feel I need more vulnerability and more availableness. And I feel those friends are really just, pushing the boundaries of where we should be as a conscious relationship. Because if we can't feel safe to be able to uh, express ourselves, and we can't trust that the partner is going to hold space for us, then we'll always be feeling like there's part of us that's not alive, that's missing. So, yeah, I'd
Mm-hmm.
love you to talk a little bit more about safety and the importance of feeling safe.
Mm-hmm. Yes, feeling safe is an interesting one because it's a two-way street. And how I see it is that, we are responsible for feeling safe. We're responsible for making sure that we are at home in ourselves, and our partners play a role in this as well. And so it's not one or the other, it's both and. We can definitely be in a relationship where somebody is clearly not helping us to feel safe. And we can also be in a relationship where that partner is doing everything they can to help us feel safe, and yet we still don't because we don't know how to feel safe. And so, knowing the difference, again, this is why we do the deeper inner work so that we know the difference. When is this our responsibility? When is this theirs? What's ours? What's theirs? And having that ability to feel, these are my emotions, these are these person's emotions. Can I be in relationship with myself and be in relationship with this person without losing myself in them? If that makes sense. And so safety is so nuanced because what we all need to feel safe is going to be unique to us based on our early conditioning, based on our own nervous system patterns, based on our beliefs and all of those things. And the truth is that sometimes safety takes more time to build than we would like. And we can actually, in relationship, we can learn how to feel safe, and we can help our partner learn how to feel safe through practice. But what I've found is that there are times when all of our stuff comes to the surface where safety feels very uncertain because all of our wounds are triggered and there's a lot of anxiety. And when one person's anxious, usually the other person is withdrawn. That's just the chemistry of it. That's just how it goes. And so sometimes those relationships can't work out, but sometimes that's just a stage of the relationship that needs to be navigated. And in those moments, we have to work through that on our own, find our inner safety, learn how to self soothe, while also communicating our needs and giving our partners a chance to do the same for themselves. So it's this matter of building inner resiliency as well, and then giving the partnership time to grow instead of just throwing in the towel immediately. This is different than, of course, than something that's a blaring red flag where someone just has no respect, or they're abusive and they're like physically or emotionally or mentally, whatever you experience in the terms of abuse. But what I'm talking about is just general power struggle that most of us experience in relationship. And what I found even in my own marriage is that there were times where I actually didn't feel safe with my husband. I felt that he didn't fully understand safety and he didn't understand how to be with me in an emotional space. And that took us time. And so it was a matter of me learning how to self soothe and not seek for him to come in and fix me. But also, it was a matter of him learning how to be more present and be in his body and be more empathic. And we sort of taught each other that in our polarity, so it was like the power struggle itself and the defensive reactions that we both brought actually became the medicine for the relationship to grow because we chose to allow that to happen. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
that's really beautiful, and that's, I'm sure, speaks to a lot of listeners right now. And I'm sure that there's a lot of listeners going right now, going, "Oh my God, I think I'm operating from like my core wounds, or I'm operating from my abandonment wound, or self sabotage." And can you tell us a little bit more about your program that you have running online, as well as the book that we as a collective can tap into and start understanding more about ourselves and healing and not coming to relationships with wounds and helping us to understand more about this and creating that awareness.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're all going to come to relationships with wounds, but it's like, how are we going to respond to those wounds? That's what we're working with here. So we'll just put the idea that we're ever fully healed and that we're going to be complete before we enter the relationship to the side. And we'll just say, okay, so we're doing our inner work. We see relationship as a spiritual path. We're going to do this together. What are we going to look for? We're not going to look for perfect. We're going to make sure our core values align, and we're going to make sure that the partner that we're entering into relationship is actually willing to do that work. Do they see relationship as a spiritual path? Do they want to use the relationship as a vehicle to grow as well? Or do they think it should just be easy, right? We want to know that first, because that will make or break, the path that you're on. And so the reason that I created Becoming the One in the first place was because it was the journey that I had to go on in order to get to where I am now. I really cannot even describe how much dysfunction I experienced from a very early age. There was no model of healthy relationship. All I experienced was abuse, violence, betrayal, abandonment. It was really, really unsafe, right? And really, really messy. So, of course, what I was drawn to was chaos, intensity, passion, but no trust, no safety. And so I had to stop looking for the one, which is what so many of us do. We keep going from these unhealthy relationship patterns one to the next. We just keep looking for the next partner because we hope that that will make it different. Okay, well, I'll break up with this person because this relationship was terrible. I'm just going to keep looking until I find the right person. All the while, we haven't prioritized the relationship to ourselves. And so the relationship pattern just repeats. And so the program that I created takes us through these layers of re-meeting ourselves, tending to our inner wounds, evaluating our conditioning, getting to know who we really are. What does our inner child need? What did we learn about love and relationship? What programs are we operating on that no longer serve us in attracting that kind of partnership that we want? And then really going to the stage of, okay, here's what I hold as my boundaries. Here are my core values. Here are my own defensive patterns. Here's what I'm willing to own in relationship, right? It's not just looking at the other person like, what's wrong with you? It's really going into that deep ownership space of, here's all of the mess that I've brought to my patterns. And here's what I'm willing to shift. And and then from that place, we can vision the kind of relationship that we want. And it's a lot more grounded and rooted in truth and authenticity than it ever could be when we're way back at the beginning, when we're operating from those wounds and we're like, I don't know what's wrong with all of these people I keep dating. They just suck. And, I just have bad luck in love and there's nothing I can do about it. We're really just throwing that out the window and saying, you know what? I'm responsible for my role and I can own that maybe I have shown up in these ways. Maybe I have sabotaged. Maybe I am not always, an angel in relationship. And as hard as that can be, it's so liberating because then we're like, oh, right, I actually have the power to transform this pattern. I can experience everything I want in relationship. I just have to come home to myself first. So we created the
I
program,
love
and
that.
then from
Coming home to
there,
self.
it was like, let's
So
do a book.
beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how it went. It was like, okay, let's take people through this
Mm.
full journey. And so when I got the book deal, I actually didn't know what I was going to write yet. I wasn't sure what the book was going to be. And it was obvious. It was like, okay, it needs to be Becoming the One. It needs to actually be this journey and a little bit of a deeper layer, more personal stories and more intimate shares about my own history. And yeah, I'm just so thrilled that people are loving it and that it's being well received in the world.
Oh, I love it so, so much. I love that you're
Mhm.
actually helping people that are on that whole, I guess, the journey of finding the one, to actually realizing that it is about becoming the one first. That is,
Yeah.
sometimes we have to go through terrible or torturous relationships to actually experience that and to realize that. But if we can understand that and have awareness around that beginning, at the beginning of our, I guess, journey of finding and finding our ultimate soulmate or partner for life, or how do you even call them? Because I don't want you to like think that I have no idea about like how, what would you call that person?
You know, you can call it whatever you want, whatever feels true for you. I mean, I believe that we have soulmates. I just believe we have more than one soulmate. You know, I think there's just so many. My dog, you know, all of my pets have been my soulmates. I'm sure of that, right? And, you know, my husband, Ben, he is the most amazing partner for me. I could not imagine being with anyone else. Like, I'm so in love with him. I love everything about him. And for sure, he is the one for me. And there's this sovereignty that we can both hold in when we say something like that. And it's really about the energetics that we bring to how we speak and how we relate. So when we say, like, oh, you're the one for me, there's a difference between being, I'm incomplete without you and I couldn't, you know, I couldn't survive without you and you make me whole, versus, you know, I just love and adore you so much and you're
You
my
are my person.
person,
That's
you
so
know?
beautifully said. I think that is exactly the terminology. You are my person, and I feel so happy and safe and good to be around you that I want to choose you as my partner for life. Yes, that's a beautiful way of saying it. And so I would love for you to just share your website and your quiz that you do online, so that the watchers can understand more about how they can connect with you and your work.
Yeah, absolutely. My personal website is sheleanaaiyana.com, which is a mouthful. So you can put that in the show notes. I'm guessing most people won't know how to spell that. And then Rising Woman is risingwoman.com. The quiz is at risingwoman.com/signature. You can take the relationship quiz there. And then if you want to find my book, it's at risingwoman.com/BTO book. It's available online and in stores as well, but you can go to that page if you're looking for a certain retailer. And of course, following me on Instagram, I do post there and share uh, stories, and a lot of my writing is housed there as well.
Oh, amazing. And are you working on any other programs in regards to relationships that we can share online, or maybe not yet, or anything exciting in the pipeline?
I actually just submitted another manuscript and I can't say what it is yet, but I am working on some new things. I also, my husband and I created a couples course actually right when the pandemic hit. We were like, what should we do? And we decided to create something for couples. So that's called Creating Conscious Love. And we'll probably add to that over the coming years. But I also have a program called Healing from Heartbreak. And that one is really special to me because we're really working in that state of crisis, right? Where we feel desperate perhaps to get the person back, or we're just really, all of our stuff is coming up and it feels chaotic and overwhelming. And I'm actually working on some new modules for that right now and some really beautiful processes so that we
Yeah,
can
actually, that's a
engage in that
really
healing
good
work.
topic to close on as well, for those that are dealing with grief and heartbreak. And a lot of my friends are going through right now. Somehow, I'm getting a lot of phone calls during this. I guess it is the Lionsgate portal, where we are allowing the old to
Yeah.
move on and the new, and bringing in the new. And I feel that there's this energetic shift of where we're just like, no, actually, we need to re-look at ourselves and realign with our highest vibration. And those people, perhaps, or those toxic energies, are going to just fall by the wayside as I choose more consciously. But yeah, I'd love you to share a little bit more on how we can forget about that person, or how we can overcome heartache, or move on in a conscious way.
Yeah. Oh, I can so empathize with the feeling of, navigating a breakup where it's triggered all of our wounds, and maybe our mind is obsessing over that person, or we want to get them back, or whatever the thought is, wishing, we had done things differently, or wondering why this is happening, or feeling like maybe we'll never find love again. That's a really common one that I notice. It happens to so many of us when there's an ending of a relationship. For some reason, the mind goes, this was your last chance, and it's just almost never true. But what I've found, and this is one of the processes that we take people through in my program, Healing from Heartbreak, is really looking at our history and evaluating, what does this person represent for you? This person that you've ended the relationship with, what wound are they actually triggering? Because a lot of times, all of the intensity that we're feeling and the pining that we're doing for them is related to something actually very old inside of us. And so if we can sort of create a bit of separation and stop making it all about them and start making it about us and our own process, then that's creating a little bit more space and a little bit more freedom for us to just be in our own process, without feeling like we need something from them in order to be okay. Because the truth is that we don't, right? We don't need anything from them to be okay. We don't ever need to talk to them again in order to be okay. We don't need to explain what happened. We don't need to share our feelings with them or write them a really long letter. We don't need to hear anything from them. We will think that we do, but we can do that work and free ourselves on our own. Yeah, we really can. So it's like, if you want to write them a letter, write them a letter, but don't send the letter.
Mm.
Put the letter on your altar until you're ready to burn it, right?
Mm.
Do the work, but you don't have to bring them into it, because what we're really working with here is the energy of reclamation, reclaiming ourselves as whole. And that's what we need to find in a breakup. We have two options. One is we can choose the path of bitterness, poor me, this, I'm never going to find love. There's something wrong with me. Why does this always happen? Or reclaiming our wholeness so that we can uncover whatever we need to uncover. We can gather the lessons and the meaning from this ending, and then we can actually attract and create that partnership that we've wanted so deeply for so long. And that's what's possible when we take that other path.
Nice. Beautiful. Yes.
Yeah.
I loved this conversation together. Thank you so much for your wisdom and your insight. And thank you for having gone through so much heartache and pain so that we can all learn from you. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me too. You asked some really beautiful questions, and yeah, it's just such a gift to be able to share this work and share this message.
Yes. Oh, well, I continue to read your newsletter and watch all your posts on Instagram. So keep doing what you're doing. We love it. We love it. We love it. Thank you so much. So yes, thank you everyone for listening. I really enjoyed that talk. I hope you did too. And there will be more of these on the Food Matters podcast. So head to foodmatters.com and see you again.